So I'd like to welcome you to the talk tonight. During the prayer, Pat did say it, said it's something we don't want to talk about, but it's a reality of life. But for us Christians, it's something we want to talk about because it's the beginning of another life that is better than this life, right? That's the difference between, and I'll be talking about this soon, the difference between celebration of life and a funeral mass. The difference is celebration of life ends at the grave. No matter how beautiful it is, it ends at the grave side. Funeral mass is only the beginning of a long journey to God. And as Catholics, this is our desire, right? We didn't come to live here forever. And why do you want to even stay in this wicked world forever when there is a better place to go? So tonight we want to talk about some of the things that we need to do to ensure that when God calls us home, our souls return back to God. That's what we want to talk about tonight. And I'd like to begin by saying that I feel privileged to be giving this talk tonight, but more privileged to be given the responsibility of journeying with a soul towards the end of their lives and ensuring that that soul returns back to God. And I want to say that of all the responsibilities that I have as a priest, this is the most important one for me. And I try as much as I can, humanly speaking, not to toy with it or take it for granted. So as a priest, I find myself, I only did one just this past week, where I'm standing beside a man that God is calling home. And he's told the priest is here, and just watch the way he clutches on you and holds on to you, because that's the presence of God. And what a privilege that is to me. Last Wednesday, I had that privilege, and as I left the hospital and I was driving back, I just was boiling. I was just in tears, because I saw the mercy of God at work. I saw the mercy of God, a man who was afraid to die, and just saying prayers with him, giving him reassurance. And then he said to me, I'm ready to go now. I hear this all the time. And what a privilege as a priest to have. God gives you what even angels don't have, right? And as sinful as you are, he gives you this opportunity to journey with people. Because the good thing is, when you see this, you also want to prepare your own soul too, right? Because when you see this, you want it for yourself. And I left that hospital saying, please, Lord, give me this privilege to, don't let me die in a crash. Give me time so that the priest will be there by my side to journey with me. So I want to talk about those things. So I've divided my talk tonight into three. The first part is to talk about the reason why we're having this talk. There's a problem. So I want to put the problem out there, what we are faced with. What are we up against? And then the second part of the talk is to answer the question, why do we even care? Why not just throw the body in the ground? Why do you bother having a funeral mass? So I'm going to walk you through what is in a funeral mass and the significance of everything that happens at a funeral mass. And hopefully tonight when you leave here, you say, I want that. So that's what I want to do in the second part of my talk. And then in the later part of the talk, revisiting the problem and talking about how to fix the problem. So those are the three parts of my talk. So I want to begin by talking, I'm going too fast, by talking about what the problem is. So one of the unique opportunities I have as a priest, and it's not just me, every priest stands at a very vantage position in society, in life, that you're able to look over and see people as they go from one point to the other, struggling through the challenges of life. You're able to look and just see how society and the world is going. That's one opportunity you have as a priest. And then as you look, some of the things you see as people are, bustling with life, going from one point to the other, some of them gladdens your heart. You say, oh wow, this is great. Life is good. But there are other things too that you see that breaks your heart. And I want to talk about one of those things that as a priest I look at and I see, especially in this culture, and it breaks my heart. What is that thing? I use the word cheapening, to make something cheap. And this is for a lack of a better word, of the funeral experience. And that is the reality today, where we are living in a world that doesn't want to talk about death because the world doesn't want to prepare for death because it doesn't want to prepare to meet God. I believe this cheapening of the funeral experience testifies to a growing impoverishment that is in us. And you look at man today, those of you who are older, you see from when you're youthful years to what the world is becoming. We're becoming poorer and poorer in what I'll call virtues. Our world is becoming poorer and poorer in it. And I mean, there are many reasons why today we're having less and less of funeral masses, even when good Catholics die. And I'll talk about some of the reasons. Let's begin from the good, I hate to use the word good reasons, but let's talk about the other reasons. One, oftentimes, is the cost of funerals. And they are quite expensive. And why are they expensive? Because funerals have become a big-time industry today, especially in North America. The other reason why there are less and less funerals today, as there are less and less weddings in the church, is because of what Pat referred to earlier on, society's unease with death. You know, we had a funeral here quite a while ago, and I was driving with the funeral director because we were going to the graveside in Warman. And usually the funeral director will take you in his vehicle to make sure you get there because you're going to bless the graveside before the body is buried. We'll talk about that tonight. And as we're going, we got to the stop sign there. And he had to pull over to the left, almost like he doesn't know how to drive. I looked at him, Kevin, what are you doing? He said, yeah, people don't even respect the funeral convoy anymore. And it's so true. People were almost going to drive into him. We're so much in a hurry that even death has no respect anymore. We're so much in a hurry. So I thought, and it became a teaching moment. I said, why is man like that? And Kevin, who doesn't practice himself, said, because man feels so uneasy about the idea of death. Other reasons are the reality of families being spread out. The world is becoming a small, they say it's global now, smaller and smaller, that when you were growing up, the chances of you ever living outside Saskatchewan was very remote. But now the chances of your grandchildren living in Saskatchewan is very remote. Likely you're going to start having grandchildren living in Europe, living in Africa. We're already seeing it now, right? So because of the so much spread out of families, when someone dies, it's so difficult to bring people together that we want to do what is most convenient. Other reasons are the increasing number of non-Catholic spouses. So now we're having so many mixed marriages of our kids marrying spouses who are not Catholics. And so when a family member dies, because they are not Catholics, so they don't understand what funeral mass is all about, and so you get into all that argument, and then we say, okay, let's find a happy medium. And usually the happy medium is that word I hate, celebration of life. Other reasons are having to make choices in very stressful and painful time, and that's why we're having this talk. Because funeral, after a loved one is dead, it's not a time to make plans. It's so hard. But when you do what you're doing right now and put the plans in place, then you don't have to worry about making plans for you. These are all honest realities, and they need to be acknowledged. But we know this is not the only reason why there are less and less funerals. And it's not only the church that is crying. You talk to funeral directors, they'll tell you the numbers have dropped. Even funeral directors, the numbers have dropped. So what are the other reasons? And that's why we're here tonight. One of the main reasons why we have less and less funerals, like we have less and less weddings today, is because people are foregoing anything Catholic. Mark my words, anything Catholic, because they are no longer practicing. And in this case, they opt to have a service just at the funeral home. Can't tell you how many services I have in a funeral home in a year. I might do 10, 15 services in the funeral home and one funeral in the church. And yet, the laws of the church says when a Catholic dies, the body is brought to the church. That's what the laws of your church. We'll talk about that very soon. Or graveside, to simplify things for everyone, and even oftentimes they are trying to skirt around the possibility of offending someone. Canadians don't like offending people. they rather offend themselves. I come from a culture where we're very direct. I'm sure you see that in me. Yeah. So the choice to forego the rituals associated with Catholic funeral in favor of more contemporary approaches, often offered through the funeral business, is what people will gladly jump at. Now, this breaks my heart for two reasons. One, I'm saddened both for the person who has died, who, when they were alive, they found great comfort in their faith. They were at church every Sunday. The church played a very important place in their lives. God was central to their lives. And for them to die and their bodies can't be brought to the church, I'm saddened by that. I'm also saddened for the family members who are left to mourn the loss of their loved ones and who would have received grace to get through their grief. And because they don't want anything Catholic, they forego what can help them through grief. So why do we need Catholic funerals? Why does your body need to be brought to the church? And I'm sure if I ask you now, you say, because I'm Catholic. Well, that's not a good reason. Because if you say that to your child, it doesn't make sense. It's not just because you're a Catholic. And we want to talk about the reason why. The proper place for your body to come to is the church before you're buried. So let's look at the beauty that is in, because when we see the beauty that is in the celebration itself, we're probably going to say, how can I ever miss a thing like this? So let's go into what constitutes a Catholic funeral. What happens? And you probably have been to 1,000, but you were either grieving that you didn't even take notice of what the priest was doing, or you were not grieving, but like most Catholics, just there, going through the motion, but you don't understand why any of the things are done. So tonight, every little thing that happens at the funeral, I'm going to explain to you why we do it and what it means. So that when you leave this room tonight, you're going to say, how can I ever die and I don't receive that when it's my right? By the way, it's your right. The Catholic funeral ritual is one of the most beautiful rituals of the church, and is meant both for the deceased and for the loved ones that are left in sorrow. One word to summarize a Catholic funeral, and you hear the priest say this word over and over again throughout the funeral, is the word commend. Commend. You hear the priest, we commend the soul. He says it only God knows how many times. We commend the soul of so and so. We commend to the soul. What does that word mean? And you're going to hear that word from the vigil prayers right through the funeral mass until the graveside prayers when the body is buried. The priest keeps using that word, we commend the soul. When we commend the soul, what are we doing? We're putting into God's care and into God's mercy and His loving forgiveness the soul of a loved one who has died. We're placing that soul in God's hands. That's basically what we do at the funeral mass. Placing the soul. And where else do you want to place the soul of your loved one that you know you're not going to see anymore? You're losing the person. You want to put the person in the hands of someone who's going to take care of that soul more than you did. And who else other than God? Both the readings, you go through the readings, the music that is sung, as long as they are mass proper music, and the entire ritual are meant to help us to carry out this act of commending the soul of our loved ones into the hands of God. They are different from a celebration of life. I did talk about that. I said earlier on, the celebration of life, as beautiful as it is, when at the house I was renting before my landlord died, I went for his celebration of life. It happened in the hall here. It was packed. And we all stood there, and I was there for about an hour, and I was wondering, what are we doing here? Because they were coming and talking about how he used to hunt, and then it was like we're acting a movie. We're there for over an hour. And at the end of the day, he's They talk about the Spirit taking something that doesn't make sense. There was no single word that reflects a resurrection. The difference between us and unbelievers is death is not our end. Death is a beginning of another life. And that's what a funeral represents. It opens the door to the beginning of another life. So I'm going to go, I'll start from before the person dies. What happens? So I get called all the time. All the time. Eugene is good at calling me all the time to go see Mom. I can't count how many times I've given Mom last rites, and I hear Mom is going out for lunch, for supper or lunch on Thursday with Eugene and Jackie. I'm going to get called soon for another last rites, right? I just told him this thing. I said, that woman is going to outlive so many people. She's 90 what?
I'll be 95 in the beginning of November.
I don't doubt that she's going to make 95, that woman. Oh, yeah. So when a loved one is sick, we want to call the priests. And when that sickness is terminal, we want to call the priests. And he gives him, I want to use the word that you're used to, though that word has changed, the last rites. So when a priest gives the last rites, what does it mean? What is it doing? So he goes in there, he says a bunch of prayers. And then you watch him, he pulls out his little oil, and then he says some prayers and he anoints. I'm old school priest, so I use the old rite, that you anoint all the senses of the person. But the new rite, you just anoint the forehead, the palms, and the feet. I like to do everything, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the eyes. Unless if it's emergency and I know the person is going to die soon, then I do the shorter version. So he does that. But before he does that, if the person is still able, and I'm going to do this tomorrow for someone who's dying, if the person is still able, you give him what we call, not just the Eucharist, it's called a viaticum. You know what a viaticum means? It's a Latin word that means something you take for the road. So the Eucharist you give to a dying person is not called just Holy Eucharist. It's called a viaticum, something you take for the road, like you grab coffee for the road to sustain you on the journey. So that's the first thing the priest gives to this person, as long as he's able or she's able to swallow. Sometimes when I go and they can't, what I do is I put the viaticum in a little bowl, I put water in it, and I put my finger in the water and I drop the water, a drop of the water on their tongue, and I take what's left. Because I know that goes. Because you need that. For every journey, you need to carry food. You don't know how long that journey is going to be, right? You need food. But we're talking about this food that makes you, the soul, recognizable by God. Because when you die with Holy Communion in you, what do you think is happening to your soul? God can actually identify that soul because His Son is in you. What a great gift. This is why when you don't call a priest when a loved one is dying, you're depriving them. Look at what you're depriving them of. And that's why any priest that knows his onions will stop whatever he's doing once he gets called. Usually my question is, okay, how bad is the situation? Oh, she's dying. Will she be there in the next 30 minutes? Oh yeah, Father, she can still be here in 2 hours. Okay, then I'll tell you I'm coming in an hour. But oh no, she's going to die soon. All right, we have to get going now. Unless if I'm celebrating Mass, right? You get going right away because you want to make sure you give them the viaticum. And then after giving them the viaticum, then you anoint them. Why do we anoint them? 4 reasons. To prepare their soul for death. Remember the oil that we anoint them with, if you go to Chrism Mass, is the oil that it's specially blessed by the bishop, and it has a very strong smell. Why do you do that? So that the person has the aroma of Jesus, smells like Jesus. The soul smells like Jesus because that soul has just been anointed. We also anoint them to offer them strength. In those days back home, when our parents and mom, my poor grandmom, can't afford taking us to the hospital, and we will never, you always forget you're from a poor home, and then we go out to play soccer. And what happens? You break your limb. Mom can't afford a hospital. What does she do? She takes all the oil in this world, mixes them with herbs, and that's all she treats you with. And I'm telling you, after 7 days, you're walking again. Because oil has components in them that has healing effect, and it gives strength to the body. The other thing that the oil does is it gives the soul grace and offers it mercy, because that soul is sinful. So when the soul is anointed, it offers the soul mercy. And then the oil is for cleansing. When you had a shower today, what did you do? The last thing you did was rub your skin oil, cleansing. If they can, usually when I come in and they still can talk, I'll ask, would you like to go to confession? And 9 out of 10, they're going to say yes. Sometimes they don't even know what they're saying. They just want to say yes.
So that would be before the last rites?
Before the communion, yeah. That's usually the first thing. I remember, and I have to use this example. Annette, you're here, right? I remember walking in when I was joining with Julian before he died. And I'll go in, and Annette says, okay, I'm going to give you time with your friend to talk. And then Annette leaves the room, and I say, okay, Julian. Yeah, so I'm here to pray for you. And he says, no, just you're here to do everything you can do to make sure that I make heaven. And Julian will always remind me of that. He says, your job, if you're truly my friend, is to make sure, do anything you need to do now, Father. Anything you need to do, that's what he tells me. So if I say, you want to go to confession, he says, if that's going to make me go to heaven. I said, but you only went 2 days ago. Yeah, but don't you think I need that? He got his priorities right. He wanted to cleanse his soul. Remember, there is no soul that has any stain that can see God. We have to remember that. Heaven is not for good people. Stop minimizing heaven, right? It's for people with virtues that look like God. And who is like that? This guy is not like that. So we need all these rites to prepare us so that we can still make heaven. So he does that. That's what last rite does. Then let's move to the next thing. If that soul dies, or if that body dies, if that person dies, the church's new teaching says the body can be cremated on one condition. Catholics forget this condition. There's a condition to cremation for Catholics. What is the condition? And I actually read the law for you here. And it's Canon 1176. It says, the church earnestly recommends that the pious custom of burying the bodies of the deceased be observed. So the church's first choice is that the body is buried. Nevertheless, the church does not prohibit cremation unless, now this is the condition, it was chosen for reasons contrary to Christian doctrine. Now what is that? Next thing, the church says, the church permits cremation if it does not demonstrate a denial of faith in the resurrection. So if you are cremating because you don't believe in the resurrection, then you're going against the church's law. We have to believe in the resurrection. That's why we're Catholics. We don't believe that our spirit flies somewhere or is at one lake or is being watched by one tree. There's no such thing in the scriptures. And Jesus didn't teach us that. Our souls return back to God. We believe in the resurrection of the dead. Another thing that is permitted when the person dies is the church allows organ donation and autopsies. It says autopsies can be morally permitted for legal inquests or scientific research. The free gift of organs after death is legitimate and can be meritorious. Canon, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, 2301. So this is permitted. In the 1917 code, this was not permitted. And then when the person dies, you probably don't know this, we get a document from the funeral home We will not accept the body unless he gets a document from the hospital where the person dies. We also get a document confirming that the person has died in the parish where the person was baptized or he lived. So every funeral that happens, whether it's in the church or not, we still get a document, and we have a register here in the church in the office where we enter the registry of death that someone has died. Now let's go into the rites. What happens at that Mass, beginning with the prayer vigil. Now, this is not very common nowadays. But it's coming back. I'm getting a lot of requests. Like a lot of people now that I'm doing funeral planning with them, they always ask, Father, can I have a vigil if I die? I say, well, I can promise you that I'm going to be here, but you can put it in your request that you want a vigil prayer. Now, what is the vigil prayer? What is it about? It's a prayer that is often heard the night before the funeral, and it serves as the initial gathering to comfort the bereaved and prepare them spiritually for the farewell. So it's where you gather to prepare for the funeral the next day, but also where you ask for strength to be able to get through the funeral. Because as you know, funeral is one of the most difficult masses. That's why people are running away from it, to get through. So that's what the vigil prayers. And what do you do at vigil prayers is totally up to you. I have someone now that I'm working with, and she wants the Divine Mercy Chaplet prayed at her vigil. She wants St. Bridget's prayers prayed at her vigil prayers, and she wants the Sorrowful Mysteries prayed at her vigil prayers, whatever you ask for. And then she asked me, can my body be in the church for the vigil prayer? I said, yeah. She said, can the body be left in the church overnight till the funeral? I said, yeah, can be permitted, as long as you request for it. Now, let's go to the day itself, the most difficult day. That's Pope Benedict, by the way, and that was the funeral of Pope John Paul II. Watch what he's wearing. So at every funeral, the priest wears a white vestment. And you probably wonder why. He's also allowed to wear purple or black. But the common vestment to wear, like you see Pope Benedict is wearing white and gold, is white. Why? Because it reflects the resurrection of Jesus. And it's an expression of joy. Why is there joy? Because angels in heaven, as we're crying here, they're rejoicing. The soul is coming back home. I always say to people, death is lost to you, but it's not lost to God, unless that soul doesn't make it to heaven. He didn't send you here to be here forever. He sent you here to be here for a while. And come back home. Come back home. He's actually happy that you're coming back home. So you always see the priests wear white, but in some cases you're going to see purple or you see black. But the most common one is white. And then once you get to the funeral itself, the first thing that happens is everyone goes into the church, and the body is placed, the casket or the urn is placed in front of the church, at the door, at the entrance. Why do we do that? This is to show that the church is the home for every baptized Catholic. And that those doors lead not only to the church, but the doors lead to heaven. Everything we do in the Catholic Church has a meaning. You just need to ask. And the next few things I'm going to talk about, talking about the rites, you always see they are connected to the person's baptism. At baptism, watch when we do baptism, unless when it's happening during Mass. The proper way to do baptism is you start with a baby from the door. And then you mark the baby's forehead, and then you process with them to the front of the church. The same thing happens at funeral. You see the connection between baptism and funeral? Because actually your funeral is a second baptism, but this time, baptism into the kingdom of God. So a lot of things that happens during baptism happens during the funeral. This is how rich your church is, if you understand it. And then the next thing that happens when the body is sitting there, or the urn is sitting there, is you're going to see this. And this white cloth is, Donna, what do we have? Okay. It's called a pall, P-A-L-L. Why do we put that drape or that white cloth over the body, over the coffin? Does anyone know?
Symbol of baptism.
How does it signify baptism? Yeah, exactly. When you were baptized, did you not get a white garment? It's the same white garment now that is put on you on your second baptism. See the beauty of this? So imagine you don't get a funeral. All this doesn't happen. And then the next thing you see before the body is taken into the church is the priest places a crucifix. I didn't say a cross. There's a difference, right? A crucifix on the coffin. We miss all that if it is cremated. That's why some Catholics will rather have their bodies in the church and then they can cremate it later so that they can go through all this. But that's your choice. The church allows cremated remains too in the church. So he puts a cross on it. Why? To show that the body belongs to somebody. That body is owned by somebody, and the person is Jesus. It's a mark of ownership. So that when this soul is traveling, Jesus guards it and says, "This is mine. Devil, stay away. This is mine." Then before you come into the church, the next thing that happens is you're going to see the priests sprinkle the remains. You're probably wondering, why is he doing that to a body that is dead? Just to remind the person that has died of their baptism. And when we sprinkle holy water, it's a sign of purification. We're trying to wash the soul clean of any sin or stain that is on it, so that that soul, remember the whole funeral thing is to help the soul go to heaven. That's the whole reason why we're doing it. To remove any stain that is on this soul, and every soul that anybody that has died has stain on the soul, because we're not perfect. So he sprinkles it. He goes around and sprinkles the body. And then after the sprinkling, the body is taken into the church. And watch, how does it go in? The priest stands in front. The same way baptism happens. When I'm baptizing a child, I'll be in front of the parents as the process behind me. The same thing at a funeral. But there's something when the body gets to the altar, you probably miss this sometimes, but look, you always see that. This large candle. It's called Paschal candle. At every funeral, you always have that. Now, what's the significance of that? To remind the soul that Christ is the one, it's the light of Christ that will show them the way to get to heaven. Remember, it's a journey, right? And for a journey, when you're driving your car, you need lights. Because in the night, when it's dark, how do you see? So Jesus becomes the light for that soul to travel. We don't know how long that journey takes. We've not been there before. They probably need light to travel. And also a connection with baptism. When you were baptized, you were given a candle. And that candle you were given at baptism was lighted from a Paschal candle. Yes?
What do we do with baptismal candles after a person has passed away?
That's a good question. You can pass it on to their godchildren. Remember, it's a sacramental, right? So you don't just toy around, or you can bury it, right? Or you can pass it to their godchildren. I'm sure the godchildren will appreciate that. I like to keep a baptismal candle of my godparents. Yeah, that's a beautiful gift to keep, right? Yeah.
Do they ever burn? Do you ever burn them?
Yeah, you're supposed to use them for prayer, right? That's, yeah, the baptismal candle, yeah.
So like for mine, I could light it.
Oh yeah, when you're praying, yeah.
Is that more so added?
Sorry?
The date of your baptism, you should light your...
It's technically we give you to use it to pray, right? So if you want to keep it for the day of your baptism too, that's special, right? so that you know you're able to mark that date and celebrate it. That's special.
Could you burn it at your vigil mass?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, at any prayer session you can burn it. Yeah. Any other question? There's something I miss and I've not seen it. Okay, probably I'm not there yet. Okay, we talked about the Paschal candle. And then there are 3 readings at every funeral. So the first reading, the second reading. Usually the first reading is from Old Testament or from one of Paul's letters. And then the responsorial psalm, of course, from the book of the Psalms. And then the second reading, usually from one of Paul's letters. And then a gospel reading. So you walk as you're planning, if you want to plan your funeral, to actually pick your own readings. Most priests will want to pick the gospel reading because they're doing the homily, right? So at least give them the choice of picking one so that it's easier for them. But if you're planning ahead and you pick all 3, most priests will respect that. And I want to suggest, because people are going to ask me, so what would be the proper reading? I got this question from someone who was dying, and I said to her, I want you to envisage your funeral as an opportunity for people who come there who are not practicing to be able to come back to their faith. So pick readings that speak to people, that look, there's more to this life than going to the lake and going on holidays, guys, because there's going to come a time when you can't go to the lake, you can't go on holidays. There's going to come a time when I can't stand here. So have you started preparing for those times? So I will pick readings like that speaks to the people that will come. So that even in death, you are evangelizing.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sorry. Okay? So that even in death, you are able to evangelize. Okay, let's move on. And then one of the things you see towards the end of Mass is the use of incense. And why do we use incense? We use incense to honor the body that is sitting there or the remains that is there. Why do we honor it? Because it is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Remember when you were baptized? Your body became the temple of the Holy Spirit. So we honor that body with the incense. And also, use of incense during funeral is a sign as the incense rises that our prayers are also for this soul is rising up to God's throne. So that's why we use incense. Okay, this is the one I thought I missed. So there's a particular direction when you're bringing a body into the church. If it's the body that you have, not cremation. There's a position, and you can see that. So when the body is brought to the church, if he's a lay person, his legs are facing the altar, and his head is towards the door. Does that make sense? So if he's a lay person, it goes like that. His legs, altar, the head towards the door. If he's a priest, it's the reverse. The head to the altar, the legs to the door. Anybody know why?
Because you were anointed as a priest, you were given God's.
I wish.
No.
I'm going to put money on this. It doesn't look like anyone's going to get it.
It's the way we face the altar. The priest faces the altar from that side, the congregation from this side.
You're right, Pat. I hate to say you are right, but you are.
Drives you crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah. 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 So we all assume the same position we use when we come to Mass. The layperson stands this way facing the altar, and the priest stands facing the people. So that's how we also sleep when our bodies are brought in for funeral. Don't forget that. Don't tell them it was Pat that told you.
I won't, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. It's Bev that said it, just Pat. I'm sure you told him and then he just quickly said it.
She whispered it to me.
Yeah, I know that. And then after the Mass, the body is taken to the cemetery for burial. And why do we do that? It marks the physical separation of the deceased from their loved ones. And this happens at a graveside, a cemetery, or a chapel, or crematorium. By this singular act, we show that we've completed our care of the deceased person. We've taken care of their body, and now they are safely buried in the ground to rest. I like to quote what the Catechism of the Catholic Church says about this, because there's actually a very strong injunction on this. It says, the bodies of the dead must be treated with respect and charity because they are the temple of the Holy Spirit. They must be treated in faith and hope of the resurrection. The burial of the dead is a corporal work of mercy. It honors the children of God who are temples of the Holy Spirit. So the church expects burial after funeral. So that moves me to the last part of my talk, which is the practical aspect. So with all this, the beauty that is in this rite, how can anyone, a Catholic, ever conceive that when they die, they will decide not to have this? How do you know when you have something that is going to be helpful for you to make heaven and you willingly choose that you're not going to do it? I don't think any Catholic will. But unfortunately, it's not your decision at that time, right? You have family members making this decision for you. And if these family members haven't been to talks like this, are not practicing, don't even understand what the church is about, what do you think is going to happen? They will choose a celebration of life. And this is what we're seeing. And I can't tell you, I wish I can say more than this, how much this breaks my heart, because I find myself, and it only happened not too long ago, I journey with a person as they're dying, and they make a last wish to me in the presence of their family members. Father, please make sure when I die that I get a Catholic funeral. And as soon as they die, the family cuts me off. And you've got to maintain boundaries, right? So how can we mitigate this? How can we ensure that when God calls us home, we get all the help that we can to make heaven? Remember, yes, there's a fee to be paid, and people are going to talk about that fee. Let me tell you what the fees are. And it's all optional. $100 to the church, optional. A choir, maybe $75 to the choir, optional. The priest, $100 max, optional. You want to tell me $275 for all of your life? You can't afford that? And it's optional. If you don't have it, the priest is never going to say, no funeral because you don't have to, or no choir is going to tell you, we're not going to sing because you don't have $75. It's all optional. The church is available to you. All your family members need to do is call, and we agree on a date. It's a responsibility on every priest that you must bury a dead parishioner. And we take that seriously. So what can you do? That means we need to plan ahead. Planning ahead gives you a peace of mind because you know that your funeral will be celebrated according to your wishes and the desires of the Catholic Church. And 3 things I want you to take note of in this planning ahead. 1, you need to pre-arrange. So choose your readings. Get a beautiful book. And Julie's here, right, Wegner? Julie has all the readings for funeral. So you don't even need to come to me. She's got a whole binder like that. She'll just make copies for you. So that you can go through I like this one. And then you can make copies and then attach them to whatever you have. Pick all your readings. Choose even the music. Yeah? Choose even the music you want. As long as it's church music, we're going to find a choir who can sing that song. But remember, when you're choosing readings and music, what did I say earlier on? It's not for you. It's for those who are sitting in that church so that they can also take Jesus seriously in their lives. So choose songs that speak to people. Choose readings that will speak to them. Especially if you're worried about your kids who are not practicing again. Maybe it's your funeral that is going to bring them back. You never know. We'll just keep planting seeds, right? That's our job. Whether you have a vigil or not in the church, okay, decide whether you want a vigil, prayers in the church or not. Decide also in writing that note whether it's cremation you want or you want your body brought to the church. The second thing, and this is not very common, but this is actually a secret I want to share with you tonight. Some of you already heard me talk about this. There is something we call in the church Gregorian Masses. And Gregorian Masses came from the name of Pope Gregory. Pope Gregory, before he became a pope, he was a superior of a religious congregation. And while he was in that home, one of his members, actually by name Justin, died. But Pope Gregory figured Justin was struggling with some of his vows, especially the vows of charity. And he knew, being a superior, right? And he felt in his spirit that Justin was not going to make heaven. So what did Pope Gregory do? Then he was not pope. He ordered all the priests in his congregation, in that religious congregation, to offer 30 masses for Justin immediately. And guess what? They started offering these masses, all of them. On the 30th day, Justin appears to a member of that community and says, "Thank you for the masses. I've made it to heaven." And so when he became a pope, he instituted it as a practice for Catholics when they die, to have masses said from the day they die. And it's a huge responsibility on the priest. So most priests not most, some priests don't want to take this because it's a commitment. Because what that means is, if you start the masses, you can't break it. 30 unbroken days, masses said for your soul, the first 30 days of your death. Guess how much mass is? You want to know? If you've never offered mass before, it's $10. It's not $1,000, just so you know. And if you have a priest friend that is really your friend, he's not even going to ask you for $10 because he just wants to get you to heaven. Forget about the $10. Write it there. I want Gregorian masses. Write it on that list.
So, right when you say the morning mass, that automatically says 30 days.
Sorry?
Like when as soon as you say I want Gregorian mass.
Yes. Yes.
So where can we get that 30 days in a row?
You talk.
Like it has to be said, that's a lot. Like, for a person to be able to do that for one person 30 days in a row?
Leave that to the priest.
Okay.
That's why he's a priest. It's not an easy job.
Because you have like in the bulletin every day you have somebody's name.
Nothing stops him from saying it for you, even if he has somebody's name. I can say masses for 10 intentions, as long as I'm not taking money for 10 intentions. So 10 people can ask me for intentions, but I can only collect $10. I can't take 10 because the church put that law so that you're not profiting from celebrating mass. Because if I can, it's $10, right? Okay, all of you here, how many are you? 50. Oh, I'm going to celebrate mass for you guys tomorrow. And then you see me with a new Lexus tomorrow. I say, what is this guy's making all this money? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the church is very smart. It's been around for 2,000 years. Says, yeah, you can offer 50 intentions, but only $10. So even though I have intentions in my church, I have more than 10 intentions every day, I tell you. I just don't announce it, right? But the priest knows. I have a list in my chapel. The priest knows. In my heart, I know who I'm praying for.
You do this right after the person passes away.
Right, the day you hear the person. Well, the poor thing has been there for 12 years. You want to release them right away, right? Yeah. Would you want to keep your loved one there for 12 years? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah,
But that said,
person dies, that's when it starts.
that day, yes.
Is the funeral counted as one of those 30 days, or is that separate?
No, it's still part of it because there are times that funerals are beyond 30 days, right? My country is 6 months, sometimes funeral hasn't happened, right? And it's not the same priest, right? Most likely it's not the same priest. So I have a situation now, and the person has talked to me because she's dying. And so she says, you're going to find a priest. So I've put a priest on alert. I told him I have so-and-so parishioner or a friend, and I will send you a text as soon as they pass. So you just start masses. Yeah.
but if you have a loved one that has died, you didn't know about this, even if it was 12 years ago, you could start.
You can
now.
still, oh yeah.
Yeah.
The graces of masses, yeah. I'd rather have mass 10 years after than not have mass at all. We don't even know what the soul needs, right? And if the soul doesn't need it, God applies it to another soul who needs it. So it's never wasted, right?
So I have a question.
Yes.
If there was real mass, no funeral, there was a cremation, and the ashes were scattered, then what? Can we still do masses now? Or not?
First of all, ashes should never be scattered. The church doesn't allow it.
I know. They
Just so we know.
They weren't Catholic.
Yeah.
My folks.
Okay. If they're in Catholic, that's different. But for a Catholic, ashes can never be scattered. Should never. The church is against it.
Yeah. If they weren't Catholic, could I have masses for them?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Even for Muslims, you can offer masses for them. Yes, John?
We can't hear what you're saying.
Okay. Okay.
I said, my folks were not Catholic. They were cremated. Their ashes were scattered, and because we knew there'd be no difference at that point. And I was just asking if masses could still be said for them now.
Mm-hmm. And
Oh, it's okay.
remember their soul wasn't cremated. It was the body that was cremated. The soul is not cremated, so. And if the soul needs prayers, it still gets prayers. Yes, Donna.
Well, you touched on the fact that ashes shouldn't be spread, but one thing that we ran across in Crystal Path, funeral homes sell cute little ashes in, but as a deer flower pot, you can't do that. That's slipping that.
That's not Catholic. It's against the Catholic faith. That's business they're doing, right? The church says the body as a whole should be buried in the ground. Because that body is the temple of the Holy. Remember that body was created in God's image. So why do you want to separate it and piece it out everywhere? Yeah, that's not respect for the body. That body is precious. It was made in God's image. So we need to remember that. Okay, so when you've written all this, what should you do with it? Share copies with your family members and actually send a copy to the church. Yes.
Lawyer too?
Yes. Just make sure it's not part of your will, because your will will probably not be read until you're buried, right? So maybe special instructions that should be read as soon as you die. Yeah. Because if it's your will, then it's too late. But let your priest know, let it be kept somewhere, let your children know, let more people know about this. Makes it a lot easier. I was going to open it up for question and answer, but it looks like you guys have asked all the questions. Yes.
Have you come across where the family members themselves very much disagree, even in a Catholic family, whether there should be a funeral mass or not?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose, and
That's why you write this, right?
yeah, so someone that considers themselves in charge.
That's why if you write it down, it settles it, right? So it's not someone's opinion. Then you're taking that stress off there where one person is saying something over the other. But, yeah, mom wrote that this is what she wants.
There's nothing written, I guess, and when
Yeah.
you just advocate for
When it's not written, right, it's left to, But when it's written, it's a different thing. Yes.
Is there an end-of-life planning form that could guide us?
yes.
I know the diocese has one, and I think the last time they came, they had one out here, and all that. Maybe we.
I can find ours and
Okay.
maybe we can make copies and
Mm-hmm.
have them here at the church or
It might be better if we got a hold of them because they just send it electronically and then it'll be.
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, or I'll ask Risha for that. But the only thing is, I think that end of life planning is more from the financial angle, it's not from the spiritual. I think the last time I looked at it was financial, it wasn't spiritual.
I think something for the picking of your readings and everything else as you go through, it'd be so easy for the families to be prepared to fill this out, and then everybody would have it.
Yeah, and that's why I said you can work with Julie, because even when someone passes, Julie sits with the family members, and there's a long list of things that you do, readings and all that. So they pick from that. So she does it when the person has died, and you can use the same module to prepare one for yourself. Or you can run it by me. I'll always be willing. Just send me an email of things that you think should be there, and I'll go through my talk again and just tell you. Yeah, but Julie can help you with all that. Julie, you want to stand so that everyone sees you? Yeah. Yeah.
Are you coming to church on Sunday? I'm at the welcome table on Sunday.
Julie, maybe you just send it to Chantal and ask her to prepare the document and just print them out and leave them on the table, and then she can put it in the announcement so that anyone who wants a copy can just go grab it. And again, if you have questions, just shoot me an email and say, what do I do with this? How do I see this reading, is it appropriate? This song, is it appropriate? I'm willing to join it with you.
Father, can we nominate you to be our executor? Do you want a little whiskey in there?
Yeah. Why do you want to nominate me as your executor?
I know you would just follow the direction of the team.
Well,
It should be.
Let me just tell you reasons why you shouldn't. One, I don't belong to this diocese, so there's always a likelihood of me going back to my home country, right? Priests they're not stationary in one place, and I'm not from here. Two, I don't know what the diocesan rules, guidelines says about that. I know in England, a priest cannot be an executor. Yeah, but I don't know what it is here. So you probably want to look somewhere else. I'm sorry. I'm not running away from it, but yeah. But thanks. I have a job now, so I can resign from this one. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
You were talking about putting the cross on the coffin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that something that the family buys for you to put on the coffin in its face?
Yeah, usually it's a family thing.
Okay, I have my mother's that she had on her coffin, so could I use that one on mine?
As long as it has Jesus on the wood, as long as Jesus is on it. Yeah, it doesn't matter who had it. Yeah. Thomas. Okay. The cross is the wood, just the wood that Pat builds or Leverne builds. The crucifix is the one that has the corpus, so the body of Jesus on it. And that's the one that has the power that we're looking for, the one that has Jesus on it, not just the wood. Anyone can use the wood, but what makes the difference and that brings resurrection into it is the corpus, the body that is on it. Did I answer your question, Thomas? Crucifix, yes. Oh, sorry, crucifix, yeah. Yes.
How would family members know to buy a crucifix?
Usually they'll be told. The funeral home will tell them. The funeral home will tell them. And sometimes some funeral homes will sell They have different types. They have metal ones, they have wooden ones, so.
But funeral homes aren't Catholic, so how would they know what to do? They do, yeah, okay.
How would they know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is their business, right? And most funerals they do are Catholics, right? That's where funerals started from. It's from so I'm sure when they go to funeral school or whatever school they go to, they teach them the Catholic rites. So many of them know about what we talked about tonight. Yeah. Yes.
Can a non-Catholic use the church?
A non-Catholic, good question, because you can't believe what comes at me. I just got a text in the middle of this talk. Request for funeral service for a baptized non-Catholic. Is this allowed? I just got a question. I have not even responded. The answer is no. And it's Canon 1:183. And I'm going to tell this poor priest, and I'm just going to put him in trouble because I'm sure the family will be all over him and they'll have trouble. Because it's a funeral mass. And it's for baptized Catholics. But a baptized non-Catholic may have a funeral if the bishop permits it. But I can't. So that's exactly what I'm going to tell this poor priest. Send a request to the bishop. But you better have a reason why you're asking him. But sacraments are for Catholics. And it does make sense, right? Yeah.
But you can have a funeral mass, but you can have a funeral as well.
You can have memorial mass. Yeah.
I've seen that with the body, where it's a funeral but not a mass.
Yeah. Oh, but what he's asking is for non-Catholic. That's what he's asking. Oh yeah, you can have a funeral but not mass, which is another crazy thing we do in North America. It's not anywhere else except in North America, because we're so much in a hurry.
For non-Catholic, though, could they have a service, like a liturgical service?
Yeah, they could, as long as it's not mass. But Clarence, I think you're bringing up another issue. You can have a funeral service for a Catholic, but there's no mass. Just like how you can have a funeral wedding, a wedding without mass for a Catholic. So when I go to a funeral home, I don't do mass because it's not a church. I do a funeral service. So you don't do all these rites. No, because it's not mass, right? Yeah.
So you're not getting all the real.
Yeah. You know, we like microwave in this part of the world, right? Everything has to be shortened except our coffee. That's the only one we spend all the time to do. But every other thing is microwaved. Yeah, unfortunately. But you don't get all these things. Yeah. And the priest is now complaining that he's doing this. Because he wants to do this. He wants to help the soul. So, why? Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
Just a little bit of clarification on that. Baptized non-Catholic, you can't have a funeral mass. There couldn't be a memorial service in the church either.
There could be memorial.
There could be.
You're not doing all this. The difference is you can have mass for them, right? The body won't be there. And then you don't have all this, go through all the, we'll just have mass.
Okay.
So it's a memorial mass we're having.
Okay, so but when they have died, you couldn't have a memorial service here with the body here, could you?
If they're not Catholic,
If they're non-Catholic.
you're not supposed to, technically.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But I hope you guys know this. Someone who is going through RCA and dies is treated as a Catholic. Hope we know that. Or a baby that is born to a Catholic mom or a Catholic dad and dies before the baby is baptized will get a Catholic funeral because the parents are Catholics. It's presumed that they will have wanted the child to be baptized. Just in case you see someone having a funeral and they're not Catholics, maybe they were in RCA, just so you know. Once you join RCA, you've one step closer, right? Because why do you want to get a funeral mass when all of your life you don't want to have anything to do with the Catholic Church? It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Yeah, you had a choice to join the church and you said no. Too bad. That's what you miss, unfortunately. And it's a choice you made, not anyone. You made the choice. I don't want to be Catholic.
Is the priest the only one that can give the last rite?
I'm thinking now, can a deacon give the last rites? I think a deacon can give the last rites, but he can't give the viaticum. Yeah, I think a deacon can.
So with the viaticum, if you had a host, could you do that then?
Who?
A layperson?
No.
No?
A layperson can't do anything for a dying person other than pray for them. The only thing you can do for a dying person as a layperson is baptize them if they are dying. But you can't, nothing other than praying for them. You need a priest. Unfortunately.
So I think maybe, I'm just kind of wondering if there's a little communication thing here. So if I went to Mass and I asked for consecrated host to bring back to my mom,
You're taking,
I can give her
you're taking,
consecrated host.
you're taking the Eucharist to the, of the sick too. Yeah, but you're not giving her viaticum.
Okay.
Yeah,
I give that last.
yeah. Because remember, the viaticum is tied to the rites. I don't just go and give viaticum. I hear confession, I give viaticum, and then I anoint them. Which,
Because I guess that what I was thinking is that normally no one would have, well, I guess I was going to say an unconsecrated host to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, so, but yes, I understand.
yeah, you can bring communion to the sick, but you can't give them the last rites, unfortunately. Yeah.
So Father,
Yes.
with a dying person, the apostolic blessing, is that one of the prayers you do?
Clarence. He just digs things out, this man. Yeah. Why do you want to know all my secrets? So, an apostolic blessing is a special kind of prayer that the priest prays over a soul that is dying, that cleanses the soul of unconfessed sins. So they were not able to go to confession because they could no longer talk, or they went to confession but they didn't confess everything. So it's not something we give all the time. But no. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I might give you Bev, but I won't give Pat, I tell you. Yeah. So this soul was so mean to me, so it's payback time now. Any more questions before we have coffee and yes, Thomas?
What guarantees that you have on those? What, like, because you said it's not guaranteed, so what guarantees that you have?
That
Yeah.
depends on the priest. Says, what guarantee do you have that you're going to get apostolic blessing? And I said, it depends on the priest. Yeah.
I know, we gotta really feed this man good.
And the apostolic blessing is done during the last rite.
You must, there are conditions for it. The person cannot come back. So you don't give an apostolic blessing when you know death is not imminent. Death has to be imminent, or else they can still go to confession, right? Yeah. So that's why a lot of priests don't even go there at all, because too many conditions that you have to worry about. So make it simple. We also like microwave too, unfortunately. Yeah, we're a product of the society, right? So the quicker you can do it, the better, which is sad. Yeah. Yes.
I need a clarification.
Okay.
You told me 2 months ago there was no such thing as lapse rights.
Yes.
And now you're saying there's lapse rights.
And I said it earlier on. I said I want to use a term that you guys are just used to.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't want to use a term. I wanted to use a term you guys, you call it last rites, right? You call it
What is
last
it
rite.
called now?
Extreme unction or sacrament of the sick. Or sacrament of the sick. I actually like the word last rite. Yeah. It's just that it's scary, right? You tell someone, oh, I'm calling the priest to give you the last rite. Oh, are you trying to kill me? Yeah. Gil, I'm surprised Donna hasn't asked for last rite for you. All these years. She's been trying to kill you, but she hasn't called me for last rites.
She wants me to stay in purgatory for a while.
Okay. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah, very good captive audience. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight.